We might be witnessing the greatest Test rugby team we've ever seen in South Africa.
I feel like we're looking in the wrong places for issues in this England team almost.
England, with that tension, could get through what was potentially a horrible banana skin for them.
He is rugby's ultimate predator at the moment.
No country has won at Eden Park in the professional era. The last team to do it was France in 1994.
Hello, this is The Ruck, the journalists' rugby podcast from The Times and the Sunday Times, racing through the Nations Championship. Round 2 is done, round 3 is coming up this weekend. Will and Alex are on their travels again. They're off to Argentina. So joining me this Monday is Charlie Morgan, fresh from a trip to Liverpool. How are you, Charlie?
Very well, thank you, pal.
Train hell getting home from Liverpool, though, I heard.
Horrific. And the stadium is awesome there. Hill Dickinson is fantastic, really nice atmosphere. Clearly, an attendance that was grateful for having a rare England Rugby Union international up there, but the way back with a lot of cancellations. Daniel Schofield playing the hero by getting us across the crew in an Uber, and then getting down and just making extra time of the football. That sort of tells you how chaotic and long-winded it all was. But no, back safely.
Dan Schofield from The Telegraph there, then being the hero with the travel arrangements. It says an awful lot if you only made extra time of the football, by the way. That was a hellish journey back. Also, back on this week from the Wiltshire studios, Stuart Barnes. All right, Barnesy?
Yeah, I thought you were about to say it says an awful lot if the Telegraph bail you out. I said, I worked there once. Go easy. Daniel's a nice bloke.
Hey, I get on with Scoey as well. I'm not about to slag him off on the pod. Look, lads, loads to get into once again then in terms of the second round of the Nations Championship. Not quite as maybe blockbuster as the opening round, but nonetheless lots to get stuck into. For each of you, highlight of the weekend, what stood out?
It's more sort of, I guess it's an ominous kind of feeling about how good South Africa, how well they're developing their depth, developing their game. They weren't perfect against Scotland, but you're not going to be if you make 10 changes to your starting lineup. Scotland gave that a real crack. That was a fantastic game. And for South Africa to come out on top, I just think reinforces that they're at the top of the tree, daylight second, and then there are a few sort of scrambling around below that to kind of keep their World Cup bids on track. I thought it was another just really interesting watch from the Springboks.
Alfie, I'm afraid I'm not going to divert my view when you said be prepared for something. I was thinking bold, brilliant, brave, the whole game, South Africa versus Scotland. I can't change that. I thought 2/3 of the Springboks, not the first team, and they were superb because that's one of the best Scottish performances I have seen for a long time. It was a game where, after the England-Fiji match, fans needed something to really shout about, and I was screaming watching that game at the sheer quality of so much of the play. It was a thrilling test match.
So interesting that you have both gone for that game. How do you view it, I suppose, from a Scotland point of view then? Like, massively encouraging, but they've ended up losing. Probably the final scoreline's probably not a fair reflection on the game, is it? But they end up losing relatively comfortably. Like, massively encouraging signs, but a missed opportunity. Is that fair? Like, how do you view it from a Scottish point of view?
It's not a missed opportunity. It's more about just how we might be witnessing the greatest Test rugby team we've ever seen in South Africa with their strength in depth. I thought Scotland played as well as I have seen them play for a long time, if ever. So I can't say there's a missed opportunity. There was the odd Russell pass that went to ground, but there were smatterings of genius there. Tui Pelotu was magnificent. Ben White, in his time in France, has grown into one hell of a scrum half. Scotland did so much right, and yet in the end they were well beaten by South Africa. So not a missed opportunity for Scotland. And it's funny enough that I wrote an article about South Africa, and a lot of times Scottish viewers took it as an offence that I said it was a weakened South African team, but it wasn't. It was still praise of Scotland, but the bigger praise was for South Africa. And as I said, you look at England, Fiji, and you look at everyone else, the real story at the moment is how can you hang on to South Africa's shirt tails as we get nearer Australia?
How can you, Charlie? How can teams?
I was going to put that to Barnsley. I feel like France are probably closest to them, and a fully loaded France would be the closest challengers. I think you're going to have to, clearly, I think the big thing with them is matching them in the aerial stuff while still having enough about you as an attacking force to keep scoring points over the course of the 80 minutes. And Scotland I think Scotland that was just a fantastic attacking performance from Scotland. I think they created 15 line breaks, which is wild. I agree with Barnsley. Tuipulotu, awesome. Ben White is such an integral part of how they go about things. His service being so crisp, his engine being remarkable. And I think it's almost sort of a more of the same. And the way this, I'm really interested to how this World Cup cycle is kind of firming up with however long to go until the tournament, whatever it is now, 15 months or so. I think the change is that sides are being rewarded for maintaining possession more than I can remember in the Test game, and I think you've got to have weapons within that. Scotland's showing that you can trouble South Africa, so that's encouraging. That's encouraging because it will encourage sides in turn to develop that side of their game, but it's going to take something seriously polished, something maybe a little bit out of the box to get over on South Africa.
Yeah, I mean, out of the box brings you to France, and the fact that I know Thomas Ramos is a fly half who wears a fullback's number, but he does all sorts of brilliant things. But then we witness Ntamack and Jalibert at 10 and 15. And in that second half against Australia, we saw out-of-the-box rugby from them. We saw Jalibert is a wonderful fly half. I think he could be an even better rugby player, full stop, roaming around. And I love the second half combination of those two. And that is the out of the box, the non-obvious that you're going to need to trouble South Africa. It has to be exceptional. I wrote again, Will Jordan got a hat-trick. I know Italy aren't players, but 50 international tries in 56 games. You need players who can do something spectacular. You need systems that work. You need a France are in the process of rewriting their back row with a bunch of 21-year-olds. And that is what Galtier is thinking. In the past, we haven't been able to take them on and beat them. We've got to do something different. France has the bulk to challenge them up front, and it has the brilliance behind. So to me, they are the main contenders. But I look at teams like Ireland now, and I'm thinking I can't see how Ireland and England at this moment, unless they completely change the way they play, can live with them. It's very difficult, but it's thrilling because I've never seen a team like South Africa just experimenting and just going through the gears every time. And as for the World Cup, we've got one little blip between now and then, and that's the greatest rivalry, the four-match Test series between South Africa and New Zealand. And that's going to be special, but Dave Rennie is new to the post and he's just trying to get his New Zealand team together. We might see an inkling of the All Blacks doing something different. I love the way Mackenzie is playing 15 to Ruben Love's 10. But that, I think, is the little blip, because that is going to be, that's great rugby in its own world. Everywhere else, yes, enjoy the 80 minutes, but see it in the context of what's coming in 15 months' time. But this New Zealand-South Africa series, boy, that's out on its own.
I think it's maybe worth reiterating that South Africa probably got their one kind of the most transformative player missing from this in Sacha Feinberg and Gomezulu.
Yeah.
France have potentially two of theirs in Ramos and Louis Bielbieri. The players that elevate them as an attacking force. So that's what we're working with there. I think with 1A, certainly South Africa, maybe a bit of daylight, but France fully loaded. Yeah, with those two plus Dupont and whatever guys he is in when he returns, that they feel there like they're shaping up very, very interestingly ahead of the World Cup. But I'm, as Barnesy said, I am intrigued as to how Dave Rennie goes about the greatest rivalry too, and how he looks to unpick the Springboks.
I guess the Springbok response to that might potentially be, didn't they play in November and France had a man advantage for a lot of it and South Africa still won with them at arm's length? France may be a better team now, potentially, they might respond to, but it's ominous, isn't it?
For sure. And there was a moment from that game, I think they'd just gone a score ahead, South Africa, and they won back a box kick, and Manie Libbok went the kick pass across his own 22 to Cheslin Colby. Cheslin Colby made a break, kick downfield. That to me was like just a snapshot of how they've expanded their game, and they just continue to do that, both in terms of what we're seeing a little bit stylistically from them, but developing their depth too, and they've got a fantastic. The biggest kind of compliment you can give Rassie Erasmus and his coaches is that they are pretty close to the sum of their formidable parts, right? Because when they've got it right and they're in a groove as they are, it's a struggle to touch them.
You've both mentioned that the All Blacks already here and Dave Rennie, just 2 games in, but I think a lot of encouragement there. And actually, to be fair to Italy, this was a pretty close match up until the second half, the early part of that second half, where the All Blacks really put some distance between them. But is this a New Zealand team, Barnesy, that are really playing to their strengths now, perhaps more than they did under Scott Robertson?
Yeah, I think this is an All Black team that's trying to play traditional New Zealand rugby. And by traditional, for the last 25 years, traditional All Black rugby has been a brand of rugby that has been more skillful and quicker paced than any other rugby. South Africa with a big, powerful team trying to smash them off the pedestal. New Zealand with a fast team outflanking South Africa. And I think Dave Rennie is trying to get back to that, and they have to get back to that because under Scott Robertson, he, a little bit like Steve Borthwick, when he took over from his role in the Crusaders, he started looking at trends, and New Zealand started following trends. And when New Zealand follow trends, you've got to remember that it's a great rugby nation, but it doesn't have a vast and different type of population like South Africa would have. And I thought New Zealand became followers, and they can't win World Cups by following other teams. They have to set the way. And when you got guys like Mackenzie at fullback and guys like Will Jordan, then if you can find your way to get outside teams like South Africa to ensure the game is played at a breakneck pace with massive skill start to finish, then you might just have a chance. And I think Rennie understands that just picking the best team and then trying to take on the Boks at their own game or France at their own game will leave them beaten. So that's why I'm really intrigued to see what happens in this Test series between the Boks and New Zealand. I would imagine South Africa would win. They have home advantage until Baltimore. But from a New Zealand perspective, it's making sure that they can change the narrative. They had a record defeat in Wellington. It really hurt them last year. They've got to be turning that. And if they're losing matches, they've got to be losing them 32, 31 and thinking next year, come the World Cup, come a neutral venue, we can turn that around. So for New Zealand, it is about pushing the Boks all the way. I think for South Africa, Charlie, it's about trying to impose themselves and perhaps land a real psychological blow against their old enemy.
100%. And I think that's actually why, to rewind a little bit, getting up over France was pretty important for Rennie in that first game, in the context of his first year, going for those 4 Test matches where I feel like South Africa had the bit between their teeth to really make a psychological statement against England. I think they'll be exactly the same against New Zealand. That's not to say they didn't respect Scotland at all, although they made those changes. Rassie Erasmus spent the whole week saying, look, history tells us Scotland are at the moment a better side than England, so we are absolutely respectful of what they're going to bring. One thing just to touch on with Scotland is the amount of line breaks they made through the middle with those little tip-on passes with their forwards. Really interesting, because that's an area of the game that it was good to see that they really won't neglect that. We know how the sweeping back play that was a really big statement of their win, big sort of feature, of their win over Argentina. To complement that with that forward play too, really bodes well for them. And for them, this next 15 months is kind of framed by how they go against Ireland again in that crucial World Cup pool game to ensure that they miss France in an early knockout game. So it's funny that the Gregor Townsend's tenure is sort of just punctuated with these crucial games against Ireland, and he's got another one, and it's about formulating a way to win that.
It definitely feels like there is a theme, though, when we talk about Scotland and how they hurt the Springboks at the weekend, when you talk about New Zealand under Dave Rennie and how they're looking to play, of moving the ball to space, attacking ambition. Same with France in terms of the Ntamak and Jalabert combination that we saw at the weekend. That is maybe a trend, and that is maybe how teams are going to have to try and take on the Springboks. I suppose even actually this is to a lesser extent, but you think of Ireland and how Andy Farrell's looking to adapt the team at the moment, and a big focus in the Six Nations was getting more pace on the edge. That maybe it's just the way that teams are trying to move. Ireland, by the way, we're going to be having a chat with Peter O'Reilly fairly shortly on the pod. He's now moved to New Zealand. Ireland taking on New Zealand at Eden Park this weekend. Just give a moment, though, Barnsley, an appreciation for Will Jordan. You mentioned him just a moment ago, but his 50th Test try, now record try scorer for the All Blacks, for all the incredible rugby players that country has produced and incredible back three players they have produced. That is a hell of a list for him to come out on top of.
Well, especially when you recognise that he has not played through a vintage period of All Black rugby. When he scores that try, he does this sharky sort of fin thing, and it's entirely appropriate because he is rugby's ultimate predator at the moment. Along with Cheslin Colby and BLBRE, we're going through a generation of wingers, the like of which we've never seen. But this guy's slightly different because he's also a very good fullback. He reads the game extremely well. And when he broke into the New Zealand team a few years ago, they taught him how not to be a winger, how to be someone who could just float into positions. And that's what he is. He reminds me a little bit of Damien Penaud in that he doesn't get in his position and stay there. He's looking all the time. And the players know, if someone like Finn Russell played with Penaud, if Russell played with all these great wingers, I think you would see the most astonishing thing. That try where he sort of reverse passed and he put one of the Scots in a hole and they scored. It was quite brilliant. And if he was with Jordan, if he was with Penaud, then you would see this game being broken. And that's what you've got to do against, and it keeps coming back to it, against the best, against South Africa. And what I love about Jordan is the fact he sees the game so well, and then when he gets the ball, he's deadly, but it's his vision that marks him out as someone extraordinary, I think.
Can I just finish this section with maybe just a quick word on Australia? Barnsley, when we spoke last week, you were fairly positive about the Wallabies, and I just wonder, I want to join you in that positive place, right, about Australia, particularly ahead of them hosting the World Cup next year. But you look at the game at the weekend, another game, they were leading at halftime, and then 30 unanswered points. All right, they're playing against, a very good French team. I get that. And it kind of, the game gets away from them. What did you make of the Wallaby performance? And then I suppose more broader, it almost feels like you just need to get Les Kiss in the building now. And I don't know. What do you make of them?
I think they need to get a fly half in the building. I mean, we talked about,
that's going to be a
we
challenge.
talked about Sasha Feiberg and Ngomazulu. Poor old Australia, whoever they pick, they go down injured. And nothing against Meredith, but he's not a test match player, and he was jettisoned in really quickly, and it made a mess of their momentum. For a team that have lost 6 on the bounce, I think there's still reasons to be encouraged, wild as that statement may seem. You know, last week I was talking about their tip pass offload from pick and drive and how good it was. Against France, they went at them completely differently, and that's what I do like about Smith. France would have been ready for this fringe attack 1 out. What did Australia do? They scored 3 first-half tries that were all as pick and drive in an English way as you could imagine. Most traditional, and they hammered at them. So they do have options. They do have variety. They do need a fly half, and I think probably now the whole Joe Schmidt thing has gone on too long. He's a marvellous coach, but this handover has taken too long, Charlie.
Yeah, I think it's a really kind of curious situation, and then the fly half thing, just to pick that up, is a real shame, because I thought Carter Gordon not only looked quite assertive in that game against Ireland. I think he fits into the kind of, he's clearly not quite at these guys' caliber, but the Jalibert, Feinberg and Ngomazulu, Ruben Love a little bit, who are running threats as well. And I think that seems to be so important. That seems to be exactly where the game is going in the context of, as I say, sides being rewarded for keeping possession, having that running threat from slightly further back, maybe from sort of somebody who's holding behind those pods of forwards and arcing around to really hurt teams. Like Richie Mo'unga sort of kind of made a trademark. I think he's probably the guy, but you're right, Barnsley, got to keep him fit.
Well, we'll see how Australia get on. If they can get a win, they play Italy this weekend. Speaking of Australia, Peter O'Reilly has left there. He's landed in New Zealand. Ireland take on the All Blacks at Eden Park this coming weekend, and I had a catch up with Peter to look back on the win over Japan and then look ahead to that massive game against New Zealand. Well, Peter, live from New Zealand, you travelled across from Australia. Let's start by looking back. Japan 20, Ireland 36. Is it 2 from 2 happy days, or was there a bit of Irish frustration in elements of that performance at the weekend?
Yeah, I don't think there were massive celebrations. Certainly Andy Farrell's demeanour afterwards was fairly low key, but he acknowledged that it was a flawed performance, but he was also quick to make the point that it was a scratch side. You know, he'd made 9 changes from the team that beat Australia in Sydney. He'd given caps to 4 new players, and therefore it was always likely that there was going to be a clunkiness to it, and that's what we got. So it doesn't really have a huge relevance to what's going to happen this week, but in the overall scheme of looking ahead to next year's World Cup, he's given opportunities to a few guys, and he had one major win in the performance of Sean Jansen, the Connacht number 8, who did enough perhaps to be on the bench against New Zealand this weekend, but looks like somebody who's a contender for the World Cup. And then there was 2 young props made their debuts, Sam Illo at tight head, and Billy Bowen is only 20. He got a run at loose head, partly because there's a drastic injury crisis at loose head, but he's somebody with a big future. And then Bryn Ward, Ulster's very promising back row, he got some time off the bench as well. So to come away with 5 points, to be unbeaten, to be leading the European Conference, if that's what we're going to call it, that's all positive. But Farrell, you know, he was acknowledging that there had been technical deficiencies and bits that weren't so good. But, you know, generally, I think Ireland are in a relatively good place.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about those new players. So do you think it is Sean Jansen that stood out the most amongst all of them from what you said there? It sounds like it.
Yeah, well, when he was asked for his general comments after the game, Farrell mentioned Jansen first, unprompted. That was clearly a bonus from his point of view. What he liked about Jansen's performance was that he didn't play himself in, as it were, to use a cricketing analogy. He didn't tiptoe into his first test. He grabbed it. He went after it. There were a couple of guys who didn't necessarily take their chance that well. Craig Casey at scrum half had an ordinary enough outing, and so the gap between Jamison Gibson Park and the next scrum half is vast. That's a bit of a worry. But older players like Robbie Henshaw and Bundy Aki played like they know that they need to play well to stay in contention. All those sort of things are positive. So I would say, there was plenty of positive things to take from what was a forgettable enough game played in front of at a stadium that was only a third full. It wasn't a great look for the Nations Championship, but what I like about Farrell is that, whether he has a big win or a scratchy win like this, he doesn't get too excited or he doesn't get too downcast.
I mean, if we cast our minds forward, as we've said, Farrell really rotated the team here. So I don't know exactly where his mind is going to be ahead of Eden Park, but massive challenge this weekend. Shall we start with fly half? Sam Prendergast not selected, not featuring against Japan. Does that suggest that he is going to be given the opportunity to have the 10 jersey against the All Blacks?
I would say definitely. Yeah, he was rested. It was an opportunity to give Kieran Frawley a run at 10, which he has so rarely been given while at Leinster, and the reason he's leaving Leinster and going to Connacht next season and joining up with Stuart Lancaster is because that's the position where he sees his best chance going forward. But Prendergast has turned his season around from where he was taken off early against Italy during the Six Nations, and he was definitely number 2, if not number 3, behind Jack Crowley and Harry Byrne. So he's back at number 1. Crowley, as you'll know, Alfie, isn't here because of injury. But this big opportunity for Prendergast to play at, one of the cathedrals of world rugby. It's interesting that the All Blacks chose to play Ireland at Eden Park, which is sold out, 46,800. Whereas they played France in Christchurch, which is a 30,000-seater stadium. They remember the fact that Ireland won a series down here 4 years ago. So they obviously thought that the team that they wanted to beat or that they saw as a bigger threat by bringing them to Eden Park was Ireland, which is interesting. So Prendergast will come back in. Yes, I think so. And the team will look a lot like the one that played Australia 2 weekends ago. The one that we're all interested to see, the change that we're interested to see, is whether Robert Balakoon is fit. Farrell indicated that his hamstring would have recovered in time for Saturday, because he offers the ingredient that Ireland do lack, which is raw pace. As you remember, you saw it at Twickenham. Apart from that, I think it'll be a fairly predictable selection. I counted 6 in the likely pack who were on the Ireland team that clinched a series down here 4 years ago in Wellington. So they'll go in as underdogs. But the way the Farrell has been framing the game is this is a chance of a lifetime, chance to create history. No country has won at Eden Park in the professional era. The last team to do it was France in 1994. But he added the caveat that we're going to have to play the game of our lives. So that's how he's framing it to us. You'll have to imagine that's how he's framing it to the players as well. They're not talking about it being the end of the season because they don't want to bring that into the equation or into the mindset. But it's an opportunity to go up against another team who are 2 from 2. So yeah, it's the last game of this set of Nations Championship games, and he's framing it as a big opportunity for his players.
Yeah, that New Zealand record at Eden Park is extraordinary, isn't it? And Farrell might not be framing it as it's the end of the season, but let's be honest here, this is a great final game of the season, isn't it? Like, it's a great way for Ireland to round off this first block in the Nations Championship. It's a really exciting match this weekend.
It is. I mean, you're already looking ahead slightly to next year because we're based down around this neck of the woods and the World Cup is in Australia next year. You know, it's fascinating to see Scotland going so well, albeit losing to a weakened Springboks team. But, you know, them winning in Argentina and then, you know, producing a real performance against the Springboks, you're thinking, well, in just over a year from now, Ireland are going to be playing a pool game against them with so much at stake. That's in Perth at the World Cup. Whoever finishes second in that pool is going to have France in the round of 16. So you're thinking, you know, Scotland have lost to Ireland 12 games in a row. That can't go on forever. I think if Ireland can, I don't expect them to beat New Zealand. I think New Zealand have got a bit of a bounce from Dave Rennie, and especially in the second half against Italy. They're playing in a way that suits them. They're attacking. They're playing with ball in hand. So I think they'll be justifiable favourites going in, but I don't expect Ireland to roll over. I think their mentality and their togetherness is good, and it's a fantastic opportunity for Prendergast, as you mentioned, to, I suppose, to advance his credentials as the guy who can go to the World Cup as Ireland's number one fly half.
Well, Peter, looking forward to it, and let's see what happens. But I think it's probably the game of the weekend to finish off. Yeah,
I like the look of Argentina versus England as well, but New Zealand versus Ireland just happens to be the two teams, or two of the three teams, who were unbeaten, going head to head, as I say, at one of the great venues of World Rugby.
Awesome. We'll speak to you soon on the pod, Peter.
Thanks, Alfie. All the best.
So, Charlie Barnesy, I mean, it'll be quite revealing, won't it, that game, for where Ireland are, but also quite revealing for where New Zealand are. We've spoken about them already. We're encouraged by the style of rugby that they're playing. But that's going to be a great game this weekend.
Yeah, fantastic. Ireland with a lot of kind of IP about how to win there, having gone down there and won that fantastic series a few years ago. I just think the weight of that Eden Park record is significant, I feel. And as much as Ireland have been probably below their best and sort of saved by the inherent grit and togetherness and know-how that they've got as a squad, I think they can certainly mount a big challenge. I just think New Zealand will have enough. But you're right, hugely revealing for both sides.
Yeah, Ireland have not been playing well, and they do know how to grind out victories. They know how to be very competitive, but Eden Park is the key here. The ground is as important as the teams. New Zealand see it as some sort of rugby heaven. It's very hard to get a sniff, let alone a victory, get a sniff of victory there. And I think this will be billed as a very big day for Rennie, and I think New Zealand will be extremely pumped up for this match. And I think it might be premature, but I think we'll see a really strong All Black performance, and the world will be saying they're ready to take on the Springboks when they're not quite. But I can see New Zealand possibly very tight for 60 minutes, but then Jordan and company just having a bit too much in broken field. And I can see Ireland just not being able to plug the gaps, and Mackenzie and co running riot as he did against Scotland last year. So I'll take New Zealand comfortably, and a few question marks for Ireland, perhaps.
Yeah, game of the weekend for me. Really looking forward to it. Let's get on to England. I've mentioned already Will and Alex are heading to Argentina as we're recording this. So they'll be back with you on Thursday to bring you all the colour from on the ground out there, react to the team that Steve Borthwick selects for the third game of the Nations Championship. But Charlie, you were up in Liverpool. You've been writing about it. You've been analysing that England's performance. What has stood out to you in the victory over Fiji?
I think principally that I'm higher on it as a performance than a lot of people, because I just think we went in and it was absolutely right to say that this was pretty much lose-lose or and a kind of no-win kind of scenario going into this for Steve Borthwick in England, because there's obviously something up with Fiji. They were and they were really poor, really, really poor in this game. The discipline was horrible. They were kind of predictably flaky in the set piece. Their head coach afterwards said he was pretty pleased with how the scrum went, which sort of was bizarre. They won a couple of penalties at the scrum, but apart from that, yeah, they looked really poor. But I have to say, in very challenging conditions, it was above 30 degrees, and it looked horrible to play. I think you've inherently got to take a bit of the joy out of the occasion, certainly for the first 50 minutes when you play Fiji, because if it's an exciting, eye-catching kind of occasion, then Fiji are going to be playing well. And so I think England actually controlled the pace of it quite well, although the scrum resets were excruciating. I thought they softened Fiji up. I think they could have been a bit more accurate, England, but I think what they will have got out of it is certainly by the end of that game, and I know the red card sort of is a big caveat here, and Fiji was sort of more fatigued as a result, but I think they always wanted to have a look at Jancy van Rensburg and Freeman in the centre. That looked like it could pose sides problems. They are bringing through players who are going to become genuine World Cup options in Noah Kalori and Henry Pollock. I don't think anything changes the fact that the Argentina game will define this campaign, and they absolutely have to be good in Argentina. But I do think it was their mission was to kind of stop the rot, stop these the run of 5 consecutive Test defeats, and they did that with a performance that was, how to describe it? Just fine, like that. It was absolutely sort of.
Do you think it was clinical?
Towards the end, yes. I think it was, and actually maybe in a lot of how Jamie George spoke afterwards about, look, it's about finding an advantage in a game and driving home an advantage. And I think they did that with how they went after Fiji in the tight, although they could have been a little bit more clinical, a couple of lost balls from the driving maul, but nearly clinical. And I think there was actually a bit. So it was really interesting. Player canning Jamie George before this game. He laid down the law. He was really forthright to his team in the huddle before they went into the change room. And then in the change room afterwards, you can see it in the broadcast. Obviously, we couldn't see it from our seats, but it was flashed on the big screen. Jamie George looked nervous, and Ellie Chesson was behind him, and you just saw him go, "Come on, Jinx," as though, right, let's be as composed as we can, even though the stakes are high. I think England felt that the stakes were palpably high in this game. And afterwards we can say, oh, what did we learn and whatever. But the fact that we learned that England, with that tension, could get through what was potentially a horrible banana skin for them.
I fear slightly, though, that because England were so concerned about an opponent who proved to be of no threat whatsoever, because of that, I feel this is another 80 minutes where the vast majority we saw England doing the things that they can do well. And yes, it's very easy for me on the outside to say they should have tested themselves in the areas where Fiji are very strong and England have not been so strong, to try and develop this all-round game. It's very easy for writers to say that, and I accept that. And I thought England played well in what they tried to do. But that's another 80 minutes gone, and it takes us to South America without really knowing anything more about England than we knew before kickoff, other than they handled the nerves. But this was nerve handling against one of the worst international test teams I have seen in a decade. So the problem is does Steve Borthwick say, right, the changes we needed to make from the start against Fiji that we didn't because we were so concerned after the South Africa defeat, can we make those changes, or will England say it worked against Fiji, it was okay, so let's stay where we are? And if England play Argentina, and let's say they lose with 14 of the same team, we will be not only back where we were before kickoff last Saturday, we'll be further back. We'll be back in the first 15 minutes of Johannesburg. And so I think the pressure remains on England because they didn't have the bravery, the management selection, the team's game style to go out there and impose. And I'll keep going back to Henry Pollock. That is why he is growing on me every time I see him, because he has the courage to go out and play. And England need players not to go, okay, boss, let's do this. They need to go out there and really start to impose, because it's a race for Australia and England are just getting left behind. And that's why I want players who have the courage to be distinct and to do things. That Fiji game wasn't such an event. It puts more pressure on England in Argentina.
I think there's a lot to unpack here. I agree that I think there is still big pressure on England. I think if they lose to Argentina, then all of that negativity, all the questions around the direction of this team and the head coach, all of that I think comes back. So there is pressure on them to win here. Barnesy, you get us on to Henry Pollock. That was always going to be a part of this discussion. If you're looking at changes and possible changes for the match this coming weekend, I'm presuming you are firmly in the camp of he needs to be starting now for England?
Yeah, whilst admitting that some people forget that, a bloke comes off the bench in 45 minutes, scores a hat-trick of tries, changes the game, and then idiots like me are saying, well, he's got to start. And Steve Borthwick can say, but look, he got a hat-trick, he did everything that was needed. But it's about circumstances. And I'm thinking, when England played the best, certain players are going to need to start because England need to get those starts. The starts we've heard about, which they didn't get in South Africa. How do they do that? You've put your fireworks on, you get the pyrotechnics, you get the catalysts on from the start to ensure that you don't get this slow and lazy start, which is then countered when you bring the bench on. But England haven't been able to counter it, and I think they're not countering it because at the moment there's a little bit too much thought about impact means some of our best players, some of our lightning rods come on at the 50-minute mark. For England to sort out this first 20 minutes against the best teams, they might need those blokes on from the start. And that's why, I think Pollock needs the responsibility and he needs the option. People saying, well, you can't talk about him being captain until he's regularly picked. But England selectors and Lions selectors and any selectors, none of them are gods, they're not impervious. They get things wrong. And I think England are getting it wrong, not starting with Pollock. I think they clearly need someone who can just crank through the gears like that, and he's your man.
Do you know what, though, Barnesy? With this number 8 discussion and should Pollock start or not, I feel like we're looking in the wrong places for issues in this England team almost. Like, if Henry Pollock start, I've got absolutely no problem with that. But I also look at it and I think Ben Earl over the last 18 months, okay, maybe not necessarily in the last 2 weeks, but over, a pretty chunky period has been England's best player, I would say. Pollock is having a massive impact coming off the bench. And actually, I don't think it's as big an issue as it is being made into. Like, either way, I think it works, whether it's Earl coming off the bench or whether at the moment it's Henry Pollock coming off the bench.
I disagree with you there, Alfie. And I'll disagree with quite a bit of conviction. If you look at the first 20 minutes against South Africa, when England were on the back foot, when there was no one to get them on the front foot, it's not about who's good, who's better than who. It's about who has the characteristics to achieve a certain role in a certain part of the game. And that's my argument. And I may be wrong. I haven't seen Pollock start hardly ever once for England. But paradoxically, I would say that's why I want to see him, because England identifies slow starts, I identify slow starts, and I think here's a possible way to negate that problem.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, look, as I say, if Henry Pollock starts, then I'll be as excited as everyone else. I just think there are bigger issues in terms of different positions in this team. Charlie, weigh in for us. Barnsley mentions there, actually, we've seen Pollock start once, and it was one of the worst England performances ever at Twickenham against Ireland. If he does start, how do England get the best out of Henry Pollock in that back row?
Everybody is loath to sort of look to the Premiership for sort of answers, aren't they? And it's kind of fashionable to bash the Premiership. But I think you can look at how Northampton have handled Henry Pollock. And going back to May, when Northampton were pumped by Leicester, Henry Pollock was a replacement, and he came on in, I think, about the 50th minute. But Saints had already lost the game. They were 34-5 down. And I think that then became, in a few ways, that became a catalyst for how Henry Pollock went about the rest of the season. From there, he was all business and he was starting. And Saints, crucially, ensured that the pack was balanced around him to bring out his best. So they had a bopping lock in Van der Mesht or Ed Prowse, often with the other on the bench. They had Josh Kemeny looking after the line out at 6. And then they had either Callum Chick or Tom Pearson in the other starting back row spot. And this is the point with Henry Pollock. It's not about whether he's open side or number 8. It's whether you've covered the bases around him. And England need to learn from that, because in his only test start so far against Ireland, Henry Pollock was in a back row with Ben Earl and Tom Curry. I looked back last night. They then had Guy Pepper and Sam Underhill on the bench. And in that game, England didn't just look sort of flat and inaccurate. They also looked really unbalanced as a side. And I think just balancing it to give him the best chance of success is absolutely key. And I'm not sure whether that means a bit of compromise, I think, on Pollock's part as well, because if you start him instead of Pepper and you have him and Earl, it means that one of those two have got to be really smart around the breakdown, because I thought Guy Pepper did that job quite unselfishly against Fiji. If he starts instead of Earl, it means that Pollock will have to carry in a few more slightly. It either means that he'll have to carry in sort of a bit more heavy traffic, or it means that other carriers like George Martin and Ellis Genge are going to have to kind of stand up and help him out. But either way, I think there's a really strong case and a growing case to do so. And I'm really on board with Barnsley's kind of view that it's a bit about vibes now, heading towards the World Cup. I think he's going to have to be a starter by the time the World Cup rolls around. And I think they're going to have to look at doing it. And I think Argentina is a good place to do it also, because they have some big dynamic back five forwards.
Marcus Kramer, what a test.
Right, exactly. Kramer, Matera, Oviedo's an absolute monster, isn't he, at 8? Yeah. So England were impressive a year ago against Argentina, but they kicked a lot. I think they kicked 80 times across the two tests there. And I'm not sure. I think Argentina will be absolutely ready for that sort of game now, and they were ready when they were ready in November, weren't they? So England are probably going to have to play a little bit of a different way 12 months on, and that might mean Pollock, but it will certainly mean making sure the rest of the pack is balanced with enough power. George Martin's a big part of that too, but it's about setting Henry Pollock up for success. They've just got to be really mindful of doing that, I think.
Any other changes for England? We saw Noah Kalori on his debut come in, score a try. Van Rensburg the same as well. So outside of Pollock, what other changes do you think we could or would you like to see ahead of them playing Argentina?
I think they will, however they do it, whether it's from the start, which would be bold, or to somehow engineer it within the sort of match day 23, I think they'll want to have a look at Van Rensburg and Freeman together as the midfield. The really bold, the super bold way of doing that is with Kalori on the wing. And if we're thinking about really finding out about World Cup potential and the World Cup potential of a gun England 23, that would be the way they do it. It might be that they keep Freeman on the wing initially and finish, and he finishes with alongside Van Rensburg, because Van Rensburg's versatility allows them to move that around a bit. I thought a guy who played well and has a really good manner about him for this England side was Henry Slade at the weekend. I just think him coming in with good domestic form maybe emboldens him a bit more. And I think I've always thought that he's quite good for young players around him. So yeah, certainly potential backline tweaks to be made as well.
Yeah, behind that, I would like to see. I don't think Tommy Freeman has got a lot to prove at 13, and I think England can get a lot more out of him on the wing at the moment. I understand that he is perceived as someone with a high ceiling, so you want to look at him and Van Rensburg, but I would definitely start Van Rensburg at 12, and I would have Freeman maybe coming in for half an hour, 20 minutes to see, and of course dependent, not something that in selection today you say that's what we're going to do. You actually wait and see where the match is taking you, because England do need a win first and foremost. But I like the idea of Slade, and I like Slade playing 13 to Van Rensburg's 12, because it brings Tommy Freeman into the game in a way that, like I say, the French wingers, Will Jordan would love. You can play off him because he's got these lovely soft hands in that 13 position. They call it the edge now. England have not been able to exploit that area, and Freeman has the running lines and the ability to play off someone with Slade's skill and be deadly there, and be much more dangerous than he is at 13, where either England or he think the objective of 13 is to carry hard and straight into the traffic. That's a waste of Tommy Freeman. So I'd go, the centre partnership, as I discussed, with Freeman on the wing. I also, he finished the season in average form, but we're talking about England-Argentina, and Max Jomo played 12, and he played one of the finest England inside centre performances against Argentina that I've seen for a long time. And it was about distribution. It was about seeing space. It was the cross-kicking game. I know people will say you can't play a Jomo and Slade. It doesn't have the power. But I would love to see England going. George Martin's there. Pollock's there. They've got all this dynamic ball carrying up front. I'd love to see a little bit of panache in the midfield and see where that takes an England back three, which would Freeman coming in with 20 to go. We then see Kalori on for 20 real minutes.
Well, plenty of selection headaches then for Steve Borthwick and England. The fixtures then this weekend, if I run you through them: New Zealand, Ireland, Japan, France, Australia, Italy, Fiji, Scotland, South Africa, Wales, and then Argentina against England. What stands out? We've said already, but New Zealand, Ireland, I think comfortably is the pick of the fixtures. Maybe a word on Wales. Victory against Fiji in the opening round, defeat to Argentina. They now have the task of heading to South Africa. I mean, that one could get ugly, Barnesy.
It'll be a test of South Africa because psychologically they've won this match already. And it's a great chance for Wales not to be scared, to know they're not going to win this game, and to go out and try things. And it sounds crazy. The best they've got that we know of can't get within 40 points, 50 points of South Africa. So let's see the things they've been practicing in the shadows, in the darkness, and see if Wales can develop in another way. So I'm fascinated by that game. If South Africa have the mindset with whatever 23 they select, just to go and pummel and play beautiful rugby in tandem, and B, whether Wales can not be put off by the fact they cannot win this game, but they can put in a performance. And it's not about winning for Wales, it's about a performance. And if Wales were to lose, and score 3 or 4 tries and perhaps concede a lot in the last 15 minutes, they could travel back from South Africa saying that is a really good day's work.
Charlie, what stands out for you?
Yeah, I can't look past Eden Park, and I do also think that the Argentina, the last one of the slate, I just think for finding out something about this England side, I think we will get an answer either way, because you're right that we've been speaking about it. We've been speaking about it all kind of podcast, that it's how unfulfilling it is when you have a test match and you don't really find out, you're just kind of back where you were. There's a bit of stasis about it. There will be an answer either way after that game in Argentina for England, and I think that's certainly intriguing as to their future direction.
Well, as always, looking forward to the weekend's action. If you want to send us an email, the email address is theruck@thetimes.co.uk. Barnesy, Charlie, pleasure as always, lads. Charlie, just actually very quickly, how gutted are you to miss out on the Argentina trip? Maybe not even for the rugby, but to miss the World Cup semi-final with England playing Argentina on Wednesday?
I have to say that is without betraying confidences, there's been a lot of chat about how that is a serious event to go alongside the work of the rugby. But yeah, being in Argentina for Wednesday is seriously cool. Yeah, that is gutting to miss out on. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean that's potentially like one of your great memories, isn't it? If for Will and Alex, depending on how the result happens, could also be absolutely miserable.
No, it can't be miserable. For God's sake, think about the stakes.
Yeah, well, yeah, indeed. As I've said already a couple of times, Will and Alex back with you later on in the week on Thursday. They'll be doing a pod from Argentina. No doubt the football will get a mention in that as well. But Charlie, Barnesy, speak to you both soon. Thank you to all of you that have been listening. This has been The Ruck, the journalists' rugby podcast from The Times and The Sunday Times.